Hi guys, in this video, we are going to discuss a very fundamental topic in your paper one and from your chapter three, that significance of research methodologies in sociology. See, we have already studied and discussed multiple times how sociology evolved from philosophy into a science of society, but what actually made it scientific is the use of systematic research methods. We have already discussed like how Weber have used certain methods like comparative analysis, ideal types, causal pluralism, and how Durkheim have used certain methods like indirect experiment and then statistical techniques like that. So in today's session, what we are going to do is we are going to explore why methodology is significant in sociology, and we'll also look at the different types of research designs, whether it's exploratory or descriptive or explanatory or experimental and comparative. And finally, we will also discuss, this is one of the confusion that the students have, inductive and deductive approach. And when I talked about sociology as science, positivism, non-positivism, there I told you I'll deal it separately. In fact, there I have discussed briefly what is inductive and deductive. Inductive is what scientific and deductive is also scientific, but that's what humanistic approach, right? So non-positivists follow deductive approach and positivists follow inductive approach. So we have already done both discussions, so you are familiar with the basic idea. So let's begin now. See, every discipline has its own research approaches, right? So if you see physicists, they depend on lab experiments. And if you look at biology, they use the controlled experiments. And we as a sociologist, we are dealing with human beings. Human beings have human emotions also, and social behavior is what we are actually looking at. In fact, when we talk about human behavior or human beings, human emotions, social behavior, which are far more complex. So Weber have understood it or clarified this difference also. When you are talking about science that deals with matter which do not have consciousness, but when we are studying what we study in sociology is human beings have consciousness and the behavior cannot be predicted exactly as it is, right? So sociology need its own sets of tools and techniques to understand society scientifically. And that's the reason why we use research methodology in that context, or like we have seen that in case of Weber and Durkheim also. Earlier, we used directly from natural science, for example, statistical technique that is directly from natural science. Later, even Durkheim have developed method for sociology. So this is why use of research methodology is essential because it distinguishes sociological knowledge from layman's understanding of society. And this one point I've already discussed when we discussed the topic sociology and common sense. So when we use proper methodology, basically our work, or sociology will get that legitimacy. And how sociology got that initial legitimacy, especially when Durkheim started using that scientific methods, right? And initial sociologists, they wanted to give that initial legitimacy to the discipline, that initial acceptance, and that's why you started using scientific methods. And also you will get that wider acceptance. So legitimacy because it's considered scientific. Now sociology is considered scientific, and wider acceptance because it can be replicated, it can be verified, and it can be trusted. And that's why sociologists, especially the initial sociologist, or whether the positivist or interpretive sociologists like Weber or Mead, they always base their studies on some methodology. So again, they can ask you a 10 marker here. What is the difference between layman's knowledge and sociological knowledge? It is nothing but your sociology and common sense. So you can be asked how research methodology transform the commonsensical knowledge into systematic sociological knowledge. So that also will get prepared along with this. Now, let's look at the broad classification of research methods. See, the broad classification mainly falls into three categories. Micro, macro methods, we discussed already briefly, quantitative and qualitative methods, primary, secondary data. So these are the important, terms that you need to understand. So micro methods, they focus on micro, small scale, individual dimension, or the basic level of group interaction, like participant observation of a community or a workplace. That's a micro level at the small scale. Okay. Macro method means large scale structures like surveys of national population, right? For example, studying the family dynamics in a village, entire village, if you see, that's micro. You're talking about a village. But if you're talking about gender ratio trends by using census data, that's macro. So census, like you are talking about an entire country, but village, you're talking about a small fraction of it. So that is a small scale one. There's a big scale one. You got my point, right? So census, I can say it's a macro, and village studies, these are micro. Individual or lower level group interactions, participant observations, these are small scale. Okay, so micro, macro methods. Okay, now quantitative and qualitative. So if I briefly want to discuss, I'll do it in a separate video, quantitative and qualitative. In fact, I've done it. You can go through that video. Previously also, I've done this in detail. So quantitative is basically relying on measurable data and also statistical analysis like surveys, census. They take things in terms of numbers, which are replicable, right? Qualitative means they focus on meanings, understandings, motives, and experiences like interviews, case studies, etc. Now coming to primary and secondary, primary means you collect data directly through your field work. You collect data directly from the primary source. Secondary means you are getting data from the reports. For example, when we studied Durkheim, you know that we have already done that. Suicide. What was the criticism? He chose secondary data. The accuracy of that is not reliable, right? Majority of the cases is not reported. Even the Arunda tribe also, he referred to ethnographies. So that's not primary source. So primary source means you directly collect through your field work. So if you wanted to give that study on religion based on Arunda tribes, you go and study rather than referring to ethnographies. That becomes secondary data, right? Primary data itself can be colored by subjectivity. So forget about secondary data. And that's why we criticize Durkheim on statistical techniques of suicide and also theory of religion. So when I talk about secondary data, it could be reports, it could be government publications, or it could be earlier studies, or it could be interview, but not directly to the person who's in the subject, maybe his relatives, his friends. So you're trying to get a data from the other person who's not directly concerned to some incident. That's what secondary source, right? Again, you can get questions on quantitative and qualitative research in sociology. These are 10 marker. Anyway, I've done it separately. You can go through that. Now, let's understand the research design. Whenever we do a research, we follow a design. That's the blueprint that basically help you to collect or represent and interpret data. So these are the steps. You need to collect data, you need to represent that data, you need to interpret, and that's when you make the theory, generalization. So that basically involved, if you look at the first stage, that's choosing a topic. Now, when we discussed about objectivity, I told you the objectivity may be affected right from the selection of topic. I am a person who might be interested in some area, so I'll go with that area. So that's my choice. But Weber allows that. Selecting a topic, it's okay, but after that, it should be objective. So choosing a topic, that's the first step. Then you collect the facts and then formulate the hypothesis, and then you generalize it and you go with the testing, validate them, and you draw the conclusions, right? But again, different research designs that basically serve different purposes. Now, first one, as I discussed, I think 3-4 types, exploratory research design. See, exploratory research design, that's basically used in the initial stages of research to explore a new or a vague problem area. The objective here will be to define the problem and generate a hypothesis. So what kind of methods you use, like literature survey, case studies, or expert interviews, or small pilot studies also you can conduct. Those are the methods. For example, you see, understanding gender inequality in a particular district. So by studying the earlier reports and census data before finalizing a hypothesis. So that's an example. So that give you direction for a deeper research. So they will ask you what is exploratory research, meaning, its importance. 10 marker they can ask, because research method, that topic itself is like very much like an ocean. There are hundreds and thousands of questions that they can ask within that, simply giving research methods. Okay, so again, quantitative method, qualitative method. There are hundreds of quantitative method, qualitative method, but what is there in the syllabus is quantitative and qualitative methods. So they are not expecting quantitative and qualitative method. You will write a descriptive theory answer, but they can ask you any specific content analysis. Like these kind of questions they will ask, right? Then you will get stuck. So if I want to trap you, I can trap you for sure. I can ask you the word or the method that you have never seen, you have never read, even if you completely prepared the dictionary, right? So if I want to trap, I can trap you in this chapter. But it's the same with everyone, so you don't want to worry also. Next is descriptive research design. See, once you know what to study, descriptive research here focus on what exists. So it aims at, describing the social phenomena as it is, like who, what, when, where. That the description you'll give. For example, you are describing migration patterns or unemployment trends like that. So when you talk about this, it often uses both qualitative and quantitative data. Again, it can be asked as a 10 marker, like they can ask you difference between exploratory and descriptive research, right? So that the way you can get prepared. That's why I'm briefly mentioning these, so that if it is asked, you won't get surprised. Next is explanatory research design. So here the focus will be shifting from description to causation. So the why and how questions will come here. Earlier, it's just about who, what, when, where, like that. But here, why, how will come, right? The causation part will come. So description to explanatory, that's the change. So here the objective is to understand the relationship among the variable. For example, how education affect fertility rates. You see how, right? So it basically identifying the cause and effect linkage in social phenomena. For example, you're explaining why rural women, have a lower work participation despite education levels. So here you're trying to get that cause and effect relation. Rural women, why? Again, this you can get a 10 marker. Explain the significance of explanatory research in establishing the causality. Like this, they can see. I'm just talking about the potential questions that they can ask from that area. Even if you think that this is very simple, there is a possibility they can ask you. The next is experimental resource design. So this is a most scientific, but also the most challenging design in sociology, because it involves manipulating the variables in a controlled environment. So sociologists rarely use it on a large scale because of its ethical and the practical issues. But there are some famous examples, exist like Hawthorne studies by Elton Mayo. He studied how working conditions affected the productivity. And he found that the productivity improved not because of physical changes, but because workers felt observed. Right? That's what he called the Hawthorne effect. And the very famous study, we used it in multiple examples also, this one, in the previous discussions if you watched. So this design basically highlights the latent function, the hidden aspect, and the human reactions to the observation. Now, what could be the 10 marker here? You can get a question like discuss the relevance and limitations of experimental method in sociology. So don't think that these are simple and how can they make questions? Yes, they can make. If I want to make a question, I can make a question. Discuss the relevance and limitations. So how much I have discussed here. The next is comparative method. It's a very important sociological method which is used to compare social phenomena to arrive at a general conclusion. And we have seen that in Durkheim, we have seen that in Weber. He done a comparative analysis with ideal types of Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism. And it was basically pioneered by Durkheim in the rules of sociological method. And he compared social facts like suicide across societies, and he established the causal relationship. And it's again used by Ginsburg, Max Weber. Many sociologists have been used this. So the fact from real social lives are gathered, and then it is compared, and then interpreted. So it's very much useful where experimental designs are impractical, where you cannot use that, right? So this classical example you can give Durkheim's study of suicide that compared the uh, you see married, unmarried, urban, rural, Protestant, Catholic societies, to show how the integration affect the suicide rates like that. So I hope you remember that. So you can write that example. You can use Weber as example, but it have of course limitations, like the social context will differ. A result may not be universally valid and it may not be replicable. Speculation is sometimes unavoidable in this case. What could be the 10 marker here? Simply discuss a comparative method as an alternate to experimental method in sociology, or discuss a comparative method. There itself, you can have Durkheim study, Weber study, like that. Next is deduction and induction in sociological research. See, let's move on to the most conceptual part, deductive and inductive reasoning, both of which guide how we connect theory and observation. Many students have confusion also. Deductive approach means you start with the theory and then go with the observation. That means, see, if you remember Durkheim's, most of the criticism that we use is, though he claimed to be inductivist, he's actually a deductivist. Because what is the reason that I'm telling there? The theory was there in his mind even before he take up the analysis. He wanted to establish this as the cause and function of division of labor, integration part. That's there in his mind. Or religion, right? How he created the totem, how they created the totem. The reason is already there in his mind. The theory is already there in his mind, and he went to refer to those ethnographies about the Arunta tribes. Similarly, suicide. That theory was there in his mind already, and he chose those data. So here, you start from theory and go with observation. So you begin with an existing theory or a hypothesis, and then you test it through the data that you collect, right? So, for example, you see that hypothesis on Durkheim's suicide rate, that's using data. Inductive means starts from observation and then goes to theory. Okay, so that means you collect the data, you go with the observation, then make the theory. So here, researcher observes the patterns and then formulate the new theory. So this is very much common when it comes to the positivist. Like you will go with the facts and then you will collect the materials, relevant facts, then observe, then interpret, then make the theory. But again, these days there is no difference between inductive or deductive, subjective or objective, right? Scientific or humanistic, both complement each other. Maybe inductive is used for theory building, deductive is used for testing, right? So one may be using for testing, the other may be building the theory. So again, they can ask you 10 marker like distinguish between deductive and inductive approaches in sociological research. That could be a question. Now, let's connect methodology with sociological thinking. See, the choice of method that often reflect the ideological orientation of the sociologist. So if I'm a positivist, I will be oriented towards what? Quantitative, scientific, inductive, objective methods. If I am interpretive, I favor more of qualitative, empathetic understanding like Verstappen Weber. So that's why we always say methodology is not neutral. It's linked with the vision of sociology itself or the sociologist itself. So the method that I use will be depending upon my ideological orientation. If I belong to positivist tradition school, then I'll go with this quantitative, scientific, objective methods. If non-positivist, then qualitative, right? So let me summarize what we discussed. It's a quick discussion that we have done to make you familiar with the research methods. So the significance of research methodology that basically lies in the fact that it provides sociology with a scientific foundation. Whether you see Durkheim studying suicide or the modern sociologists, they are analyzing the present setup that the online communities. What make it sociology and not common sense is the method. See, suicide, we have commonsensical understanding. Right, till then it was psychological problem, but it becomes sociological because of the methods that he used. Or commonsensical understanding is there. Or online communities, we have a common, everyone have an understanding, but sociologists have a different understanding. So what is the difference? Is the method that is used, the perspective that is used, the interpretation that you make, right? So the research methodology, we can say, that's what I started off with. It gives the structure and legitimacy. So the question is significance of research method. So you need to conclude in that way. Remember your conclusion, okay? And it also enable objective generalization, and it bridges the gap between theory and the empirical reality. So guys, again, 10 markers, multiple 10 markers they can ask, and question can come in 20 marker also, like explain the significance of research method in sociology. 10 marker could be, inductive, deductive, explanatory, descriptive. These are worth 10 mark only. So they will ask you like layman's knowledge versus sociological knowledge. Nothing but sociology versus common sense. Quantitative, qualitative methods, 10 marker. Exploratory research, 10 mark. Descriptive research, 10 mark. Explanatory research, 10 mark. Experimental method with the Hawthorne effect. I've explained that, right? Elton Mayo, comparative methods, Durkheim study, and deductive inductive reasoning. All these can be potential 10 markers. So I'm covering everything so that you're not going to miss out on anything. So that's the idea. So that's about this session. Thank you so much. And in case if you're looking for sociology mentorship or classes or test series, get in touch with us. We'll help you. See you there.